you are listening to 90.7 WCLH Home on Metal Mondays, and that was Destruction off of their latest album, Under Attack, with the title track, Under Attack. And right now, I am on the phone with entrepreneur, author, and co-host of the Classic Metal Show, Chris Aiken. Are you there, Chris?
I am here. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I am beyond awesome because I'm here in Wilkes Barre, my second state home.
Really? Wilkes Barre?
Yeah,
That's
well,
great.
I have relatives there. I do. I have relatives that live there in Wilkes Barre, so I've been there many times.
Yeah, all my family on my mom's side is pretty much from Wilkes Barre.
Okay.
And I've been here. I live across the bridge in 44. I don't know if you've ever heard of that town, but yeah. Wilkes Barre, Wilkes University. It's a great school.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. So we're here today. You're on my show today, mostly to talk about your latest release book called Call Me Chris, A Tale of Healing, Recovery, Selfishness, and Resolve.
That's right.
And so you started writing this around 1996, right?
Yeah. I just to backstory it a little bit. I was in a pretty nasty industrial accident. I was standing in front of a steel mill furnace and it blew up. So I took a pretty major burn that pretty much took me out of commission for a year and a half while I went through a bunch of surgeries and a bunch of rehab and getting my health back in order, so to speak. But yeah, I did. I started writing this thing in 1990, late 95, 96, somewhere in there, as kind of a form of hand therapy to start getting my fingers to work again. And then it went from just being notes to actually becoming a manuscript. And then I put it away for a while. I just kind of didn't want to relive that for a while. But now I've become somewhat of a writer, so I decided that it was time to revisit this one and clean it up a little bit and, and then put it out so that the masses can read about the fun that it is to be me.
Yeah, and I did read the whole thing, and yeah, I don't know, it didn't seem like that much fun to me. But we'll talk about it more.
Sure.
When I was reading it, I thought it was somewhat like relatable, not in a way that I was ever in that situation, and it seemed from reading it, it was an extremely difficult time for you and your family.
Sure.
But it was only relatable really in the way that this could happen to anyone, and you actually mentioned that somewhat in your reading, in your book, that it can actually happen to everyone. And it just, at that time, my family was kind of in the same situation as you.
Okay.
My parents were both in their early 20s with small children. My dad was working the night shift. I know you wrote about in your book how you hated that shift and everything like that.
Right.
And it actually, a reaction I had was I actually asked my father, like, were you ever in harm's way? Like, I'm talking about like metal church songs now.
Right.
Were you ever like in harm's way? And it's just a book that makes you really think that even though you might not be in the situation like you were working in a dangerous job, that it could really just happen to anyone. So was this book, even though it's specifically about your accident, do you think it could be a good read for anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I tell people this all the time. If you've ever been hurt in any kind of way, whether it's you've broken your leg or you're in a burn accident or you're in a car accident or whatever happens to you, you know what? It's all encompassing. Everything in your world stops except for that injury. I don't know if you've ever broken a bone in your body, but if you have, it hurts. And when it hurts nonstop, you can't think about doing anything else or getting past anything else. You get completely consumed by it. And everybody's had that in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just, even if it's the death of a mother or father or what have you. It consumes you. And when it consumes you, it really takes you a long time to get through it. So, yeah, and specifically with my book, it took a very long time to get healthy and get past it. And, some of the mental stuff getting past it took me as long as, a decade to before I really was past, like fireworks as an example. I didn't go to fireworks for 10 years because every time I would hear any kind of an explosion or something, it was like, well, I'm right back in the furnace being burned again. And it just messed up my head. So, yeah, I think everybody can relate to it in some way. And in other ways, I think people just like a survivor story. And I went literally from being dead on the table to being alive and thriving and having businesses and books and radio shows and all this stuff now. So if anybody can do it, I prove that anybody can do it, I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and you did do it. And now I actually, well, what you said there, I realize a lot of people could experience these accidents, and I was going to mention that, but I don't think I've ever really been in any sort of accident, never broken a bone, never even got stung by a bee. So,
jeez.
But yeah, it was still a good read, and
Excellent.
It was so much easier to understand things that have happened to people like yourself.
Sure.
And I wanted the book because I'm a fan of you and Neely on the Classic Metal Show, but I would feel like, once again, it's a good read for anyone, and like you mentioned before, anyone could relate to it.
Sure. And it's funny too, because a lot of people that know me from the CMS are quite surprised by my writing, because for people that don't know the Classic Metal Show, it's as harsh as you can possibly be. There's no rules, and there's no censorship, and there's no, FCC or any of that stuff, and it is as brutal as it can be. But this is kind of where I let out the other side of me a little bit. That's, a little more personal, a little more, because nobody can be that vicious, I guess. But, it definitely does show a different side. And, people live their lives that same way, really. I mean, I'm sure you have friends that are one person when they're with you, and then you go out with them somewhere and they act totally different. And, in a way that's normal. And, I sort of do that on the CMS, and the books are just kind of an extension of a piece that I don't necessarily share in public all the time.
Yeah, I did see a different side of you there, but I did see there were some pages where I saw some Classic Metal Show Chris coming out there.
Well, it's not all fake on the...
Yeah. Okay, so you said that you hope to have the book available for family members of burn victims in the hospital. Mm-hmm. How much did you consider them reading it when you were writing Call Me Chris?
Good amount, actually. One of the things, the book itself. Well, I'll go back a little bit. When I was going through it, my mom had once said to me when I was in the hospital about she wished that there was a book that she could have read to help her understand what I was going through. So, in a way, that's always been in the back of my head to do that. And so, now there finally is one that at least from me, there's others that are out there, but here's one that I can personally provide to do that. I didn't let it influence the writing so much, and there are definitely things in the book that some of the people at the burn unit that I was in were not really thrilled that I wrote. But, I always try to speak honestly, so that's what I did write. But and I'm taking steps now to get it out there. I'm for the local burn unit here in Cleveland, the one that took care of me, I am donating, probably 50, 60, 100 books, whatever it's going to be, to that unit that they can give away for free to, people and families that are going through stuff. And I am doing some public speaking to help people that are going through burn-related accidents or just accidents in general. And and I donate to, even with my other books, I've donated to various charities. For this one, I'm obviously going to donate to burn support charities to try and help, and whether it's with money or with books or whatever. So there is a bit of that. There were some concessions made at the behest of some of the burn vics, the hospital rather. They didn't want me to put the pictures in the book. Like, I have a bunch of pictures of the day I got burned. And I was going to put them in. I know I joked about it on the CMS that I was going to have a vegan version and the barbecue version, but they asked me not to do that. So, and they explained why and thought that it would not be helpful to burn victims to do that. So I went ahead and caved in a rare moment for me. I caved in and said, okay, I won't do that. But I'm trying to make this thing helpful to, anybody that wants to read it. But at the same time, I have a place in my heart too for people that are going through what I went through, because it's a tough spot. So I'm not trying to rock the boat, so to speak.
Yeah. And you didn't add those pictures, but I see the cover art right here. That looks pretty brutal too. Like the burns on that. So that kind of has some imagery there. And your daughter actually designed that cover, right?
Yeah, she did. She as the story goes, if you look at the cover, you'll see the little sign over my head that says "Call me Chris." And when I was first hurt, I went through 12, 14, whatever many hours of surgery it was, and they wrapped me all up and stuck me in a bed. And my wife at the time, she went to the burn unit and she couldn't find me, and they came walking through and they pointed me out to her, and the nurse called me Charles, which is my first name. It's Charles Christopher, but I never used Charles, so she told the nurses to call me Chris because I would get annoyed if they called me Charles. So they taped that sign up over my head. And it's kind of the imagery that I wanted to reflect was that right after an accident, the only thing that identified me with the person I had been for 26 years or whatever till the day of the accident was this little stupid piece of paper on the wall. That's how much of my identity the burn stripped away from me at the beginning.
Yeah, you were pretty much covered, like head to toe, like a mummy almost. Would you say?
I guess. Yeah. I was in a coma, know. So I don't know. I guess so.
Yeah. Okay. And you touched on your recovery, how it was a long process, and you talked about in the book a lot how music got you through a lot.
Sure.
Did the experiences you had in the hospital with music make you appreciate music even more?
Yeah, I would say so, and it really redirected a lot of my energy. I mean, I was always a concert guy. I was always, I always went to shows and whatnot, but I went from being a concert guy to being involved in the industry. Had a lot to do with the accident. I had nothing to do. I was off work for 4 years, and in that time that I was off, I started writing for the local magazine in Cleveland for, writing CD reviews, and then going out and reviewing concerts, and then doing interviews with bands and whatnot. And, there's a chapter in the book about how I used a Pantera concert and my motivation to get to that show as something to look forward to and something to push me. But then later in life, I got to share that story with the Pantera guys, and I got to become friends with Dimebag and Vince and Phil, because of this accident, because I shared the story with them. So, yeah, the accident had a lot to do with me using music, and I am, as I'm sure you're well aware, I am very entrenched in music and music theory and everything now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you about that story because in the book you mentioned it, but you didn't get too into it into the story.
Sure.
Well, first I was going to ask you, like, you are a lover of all types of music, and you express that a lot. And as a kid, when you went to all these shows like Testament, Metallica, Exodus, Pantera, were you one to be in the pit? Or were you the one to be, like, would you listen to Exodus and actually go out and beat up some posers at all? Or
no, I wasn't like that necessarily. I wasn't the fight guy, but I was definitely in the pit. I could tell you many, 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 many stories about me being battered and bruised and broken fingers and, concussions and everything else from getting in some violent pits. But I loved moshing. I was a total mosh freak. And if there was a pit, I was in it for many, many years. Now I'm just too old for that. Now I need a chair.
Yeah, I'm always too afraid to go in there. Like, I always want to, but I feel like my battle jacket is going to get ruined and someone might ruin it. And I was at a concert yesterday. I was at the Rockin' Derby.
Okay.
And actually I put bags on my shoes just so they wouldn't get ruined. So I thought there's no way I could go in the pit in Megadeth with bags on my shoes so they won't get ruined. They'll destroy me.
No, you got to wear clothes that you don't care about, or just buy a T-shirt before you get in the pit so that if it gets ripped or whatever, you're good.
I definitely got to do that next time. So about that Pantera show that you were talking about, I was going to ask you, like, how did that show when you went during recovery rank on the best Pantera shows you've been to? Because you were recovering from a serious accident, but at the same time, you pushed yourself to be able to be there. So was
Sure.
that one of your favorite shows, or maybe not so much because of the situation you were in?
I mean, as far as their performance, it wasn't great. It was definitely one of their not so great shows as far as just true performance. But, it means more to me than probably any Pantera show that I've ever been to, just because it was It was a motivator for me to get to go to that show, and I made it happen. And I mean, everybody from doctors to friends to family all thought that I was crazy to go. But I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am, and I'm going. And I would have never missed a Pantera show, and I can honestly say that I never did. So, in that level, it was certainly one of the most important things that I've done. But, performance-wise, and it's funny because I have the audio of it, and I listen to it now, and I'm like, yeah, that show kind of sucked. But, but you know what? It's been cool, and the Pantera guys have been great friends to me, and I have many, many great memories with those guys. And if you would have told me the day that I got burned up that I would outlive Dimebag, I would have thought you were nuts. So, it's ironic how the world works,
Yeah. Okay, just if there's people tuning in right now, I'd like to just remind what's going on. I'm on the phone right now with co-host of the Classic Metal Show, Chris Aiken, who also has just written the book, Call Me Chris, A Tale of Healing, Recovery, Selfishness, and Resolve. Now, Chris, your writing style in this book, I think it's similar to, the dialogue that you use when you're talking on the Classic Metal Show. Mm-hmm. You're pretty much having a conversation with the reader. You put everything on the table. You say what you mean what you say, no apologies, no regrets. And you've written 2 other books, one called Little Victories and a book about Metallica's Black Album. Mm-hmm. So even if you agree with how I just said your writing style was, do you like writing this way? And have you written the other books like that? I haven't read the other 2. Yeah. And will you continue to write this way when you write other books?
Yes, and yes. I got an email the other day from somebody that's just now finished reading Call Me Chris, and they gave me the best compliment I think anybody's ever given me, which is that when they read my books, they don't feel like they're reading a book as much as they feel they can actually visualize what I'm going through. And that's to me, that's the best compliment ever. I mean, I don't care about selling books. I mean, I make enough money to book selling is not my make or break. I care about being a very good storyteller, and I think I do tell stories really well. I think the Classic Metal Show is a great forum for me to do it. I think books are a great forum for me to do it, and that's kind of how I write. I'm not overly creative. I just kind of write what I think, and sometimes I take out enough of the profanity that it can translate to be in a book. But for the most part, that's what I do. That's how I know how to do it. I do have more books that are coming, and they're being written the same way. They're definitely being written in that place. Little Victories, the one that you referenced before, that's about going through my divorce, and that was written in real time, so that one is definitely written that way. And the Metallica book is really it's a collection of stories about the various songs on the Black Album and events in my life that were going on during that time. So that one, again, I'm not the most creative guy in the world. I don't write fiction. I don't write stories as much as I just tell stories about my life, and people seem to be interested, so I'm happy.
Yeah, and the stories and what I read, Call Me Chris, well, I read the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It definitely produced like a lot of imagery in the head. It was almost like, you were there. And like I said, it's an easy read, and it's a good read.
Thanks.
So you said, we already mentioned that the accident changed your career almost because you began typing, and that's why you started writing books like Call Me Chris. Mm-hmm. Was it at this point also after this that you got involved in the radio? Did you have any other experience prior to the accident with radio?
The only experience I had was I took radio in high school. And, I was in high school, we had a radio station, and I was a DJ for a year or so there, and here, this will be a big shock, until I got suspended and then kicked off the air.
Oh, really?
So
the FCC or something?
No, for playing music off the playlist. Like back then we had a playlist, and we were only supposed to be playing top 40 stuff, and I was sneaking in Wasp's The Last Command and Testament records, early Testament records and whatnot, so I got booted right off the air for that. But yeah, then I didn't do radio for a long time, and then I started doing radio. I was on a station here. It's the biggest station in Cleveland, WMMS. I started doing that as kind of a favor to a friend. I had a little magazine that I was writing at the time, and a friend's band asked me to help them get on this radio station. So I made a couple calls, and they invited me to come down and be on the show. And I kind of mixed it up with Dave Mustaine a little bit. The guy that was the host of the show was doing an interview. He threw it to me to ask him a question. It was about the album Risk, and I asked him why the album was so bad. And needless to say, Dave started yelling at me, and I started yelling at him, and the response was fantastic. Some good, some bad, but all response. And within a month, they asked me to be on the radio, and then I was on commercial radio for 12 years out of that. So then somewhere along the way, I met Neely, and I started doing a classic metal show as well, and we're still going strong.
Yeah, it seems like your honesty really plays a factor in that then.
Yeah.
With all the music, yeah. I say how it is.
Yeah, I think so. And people don't want to be lied to. I don't think anybody wants to listen to radio where it's like, hey, everybody, the world is great, and it's sunny and 52 outside, and guess what? There's traffic on the road, and here's Van Halen. Nobody wants to hear that garbage. That's our dad's radio. That's not what we do. That's not what we think about. It's not how we think. We like to hear real.
Yeah. And that's how I think, like, when I'm on the show here, that what people expect, like, because they'll say to me, oh, you're not happy enough. It's like, I think you're confusing happiness with sincerity. Like, I want to be more sincere and just say it how it is. I don't really want to talk like terrestrial radio, how they talk, you know?
Sure. Well, you could have done happy. I mean, because everybody thinks happy when you play Overkill, right? You know, hey, everybody, that's from the great album White Devil Armory in 2014. What a great year for metal. Ugh. Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah. I don't know. I've had some comments about it, but I'll just let it go and still be sincere and just talk how I normally talk.
If they're listening, then let them complain. That's always. If I quit doing radio for every time somebody complained about something I said, I would have been off the radio a very long time ago. And instead I do a show that does 20,000 listeners a week or whatever it is for the CMS, and as a super successful podcast. It has a huge following, and and I'm happy with that. And you can't worry about what other people think, because in real life you can't worry about what other people think. You just do your thing, and if you're pleased with it, then that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and as someone once told me, success in radio, as in anything, is granted to those that do it their own way without compromise. Yeah, and that's what you wrote to me in my book. Those are your words right there. I got it signed by you. And are you still signing books now?
I am. If people go to chrisaikenbooks.com, I still have, I'm looking at the box right now, I still have about 15 copies that are available for autographs. And then after that, you're going to have to mail it to me to get it autographed, I guess, because they'll only be available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon and, online to purchase. Or I guess they'll be in bookstores too, although don't ask me what the name of even a bookstore is at this point.
Yeah. So, let's see. Well, we went over okay, so not only, I'll mention all the other things you do. You have your IT service, Aiken IT Services, and you also have a pinball arcade in Pittsburgh called Pinball PA. So, and we kind of already mentioned this, but I was going to ask you, like, do you think that the accident played a big role in your career changes, like starting your own businesses? Did you have a change in thought? Like you didn't want to work in a factory anymore, even though at one point you mentioned that's really the only thing you wanted to do. You just wanted to get in there, do your 8 hours, and then leave. So do you now enjoy your careers a lot more?
You know what? I probably not directly from the accident so much, but the one thing the accident did for sure do is it changed me from being a lazy bum like that just wanted to skate through life and not work very hard, to being somebody that works immensely hard. And I do work very hard. I mean, we talk about it sometimes on the CMS, but I do literally work 18 hours a day, every single day, Monday through Sunday. It never stops. It never goes down. But I'm okay with that because I got to grow my hair long. I get to wear sweats and T-shirts all the time, and I don't compromise for anything. I've been very blessed to have the IT business take off, and now the Pinball Palace out in Pittsburgh is doing very well as well. And and I still have a little bit of time left to write these books and do radio, and I'm living a life that most people only dream about doing. I got to work real hard to maintain that, but I don't mind that. It's certainly better than working in some dirty steel mill and almost dying.
Yeah, and that's kind of on the path I'm trying to be on, but being in the radio, because music is something that I love. So if I'm involved in that in any way, I'll be happy,
Sure.
as you are in your careers right now. How close is the Pinball Museum, Pinball PA, to Heinz Field?
About a half hour away.
Okay. Because I just thought that'd be a cool thing. All my family are Pittsburgh Steelers fans, so
Sure.
I feel like if we were ever in the area for a game, we'd definitely stop by.
Yeah, just let me know. I'll comp you and your family. My treat.
Okay. And as we wrap it up here, I'll just say again the book title. We're here with Chris Aiken. He wrote the book Call Me Chris, A Tale of Healing, Recovery, Selfishness, and Resolve. And I always recommend my listeners also listen to the Classic Metal Show. Chris, if you had to pick a segment that they could find that showcases what you guys on the CMS do, which one would it be?
Wow. Maybe Ian Hunter. It's just called Ian Hunter on you can get it on YouTube or Spreaker or whatever. That's a pretty funny one. There's a lot of them. There's depends on what you're into.
I wanted your personal opinion because that must have been before I started listening. That one doesn't really ring a bell. I know my favorite one so far this year has been Rock Nation Incorporated.
That's a good one too. And there's other ones, but I don't know that I can say the names of them.
Yeah. And that's why I said they'll have to go out and look for them because I don't know, maybe I can't really post them to a school-affiliated website.
Probably not.
Okay. And before we head out, you mentioned we could get your book at chrisaikenbooks.com. Mm-hmm. Is that the web address, right?
That is the web address. Yes, ma'am.
And can you give some information on the Classic Metal Show and where they could find it and
Sure.
where they could listen to it?
Sure. You can always go to theclassicmetalshow.com. That's our main website. You can listen. Best place to listen to it is Spreaker. It's Spreaker.com/user/CMS Rocks. Or you can look up the Classic Metal Show on iTunes and you can get the last 200 or 300 different podcast episodes of the show. So we're out there, YouTube. If you just Google search the Classic Metal Show, you will find 1,000 ways to find us and listen to us. We're pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, and I've said before, just if I mention you guys, just look up the Classic Metal Show. You're like the one and only guys out there. And it's something I really do look forward to every Saturday. It's a great show.
Thanks.
Yeah. To get the listeners to know more about your musical taste, do you have a request before you leave?
To play on the way out?
Yeah, I'll play it for you.
Do you have Vulgar Display of Power there?
I'm on Spotify, so
right.
I pretty much.
How about if we go with Regular People from Vulgar Display of Power? That's a good one. That's a nice little happy song.
Is it? Yeah. It's radio friendly, yeah.
Well, if we got to go radio friendly, let me think here. Because I don't think that one is. Go with Strength Beyond Strength from Far Beyond Driven. That's the first tune on that record. That should be a little more friendly. Doesn't have an F-bomb.
Yeah, I got it.
Doesn't have an F-bomb in the chorus like Regular People does.
Okay. And as you would say on the CMS, thank you so much for calling. And I don't mean that like you mean it to the callers on the CMS. I greatly appreciate you calling and being a part of the show.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I definitely appreciate the time. It's awesome.
Yep. So go out and get the book. Call me Chris. Thank you, Chris Aiken of the Classic Metal Show, for calling in.
Sure. Thanks. Appreciate it.
And I'll be hearing from you on Saturday during the CMS.
You got it. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.